I'm not raising black children. I'm raising children.
Well, hello and welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Rita. I hope you all are doing well. So today we're going to talk about a very interesting interview. If you have not heard, very popular UFC fighter. He adopted 2 black sons, and in this interview, he said that he was not raising black men. He was raising men. So we are going to talk about this interview, not the whole thing, but we're going to take out a few clips of it, and we're going to talk about, do you agree? Do you not agree? So let's go. I'm going to play a little clip and then stop it, and then we'll discuss. All right.
Tough question to ask you, but I think it's important. So your adopted children are black.
Yep.
I would imagine if it hasn't happened already, there are going to be tough issues that you're going to encounter with them. Both a lot of questions, maybe things that you can't relate to. I mean, have you thought about how you're going to tackle stuff like that when it arises?
Yeah, well, number one.
Okay. Before we get into this, I just want to interject a little bit. I think this is a very interesting question, and here's why I say this. There is this assumption that all black people have encounters pertaining to them being black. There is this widespread assumption, right? Stereotype really, that if you're black, you are necessarily going to encounter problems because you are black. Can I just be honest with you? I have never in all of my years of being on this earth encountered any issues because I'm black. Never. Not once. Not one time have I encountered problems because of being black. So this is I feel like this is perpetrated by people who want to continue to harp on this idea that blackness is somehow, and this is how I see it, blackness is somehow related to some kind of handicap, or being black is related, when people see you and you're black, they automatically are going to think, you know, all of these totally horrible negative things about you. And that's just not true. If that were true, I wouldn't be able to sit here and tell you that I have not had not one negative experience as a result of me being black. But that's kind of the belief, and yeah, the stereotype, and it is not true. That's my thought. Anyway, let's continue.
You'd never know when the tough questions are going to come, when the situations are going to arise. So it's more praying for wisdom every single day. James 1:5, he who lacks wisdom, ask for it, and the Lord your God will give it abundantly. Because whether it be me and my family, my children, being a father, or my fight career, my business, whatever it might be, just asking for wisdom and just asking that I will have the right answers to the questions in the moment, and give them to me, give me the wisdom in the moment, because the situations will arise. And it's so obvious. Obviously, if you look at the way my boys look compared to me, you say, okay, well, their skin is dark and his skin is light. We are a biracial family. But when I see them, they look exactly like me. When I see them, I can't imagine my sons not looking not like me, as the world would see it, right? You know, so it's praying for wisdom and asking for wisdom. And it's also,
I'm just going to pause right here. Okay, so he said something really interesting. Obviously he is, well, not obviously, but he is a Christian. And I love the fact that he used James in his explanation, because ask yourself, what does it mean to raise your sons with values, just simply with values? Because guess what? The Bible does not give values for you, sir, but not for you. It's okay for you to steal, but it's not okay for you to steal. It's okay for, you know what I'm saying? So So he's right about he's right about just wanting to raise his sons with his same values. That's correct. I do, however, I want to touch on what he said about situations will arise where, there will be, like I said, situations will arise where they'll have to have this conversation about why they look different. I have people in my family who look very different. I have a relative who is very, very fair skinned, probably. I mean, she's very light. Her husband is very dark. And so then when they had kids, when their kids would ask questions, well, the kids are pretty far apart, right? So the first kid they had was dark, like her husband. He would ask questions about his complexion. And the way they answered the question was basically, it's biology. Sometimes you come out darker, sometimes you come out lighter, no big deal. Because that's really what it is. It's biology, right? And so, yeah. So that's how they answered it. And then when they had their second kid, the second kid came out really light, same types of questions, and they just answer the questions. Now, as far as dealing with that, as you send them off to school and things like that, if you just teach your kids values and you teach them right from wrong, then if somebody has something negative to say, whether it be whether it be about their color or their whatever the case may be, if you just teach them values, then you don't have to teach them check off every single box of offenses or every single offense that they could possibly encounter in life. You just give them foundational rules and guidelines, and they have that to go on. You don't have to go into, like I said, check every single box you can possibly think of all of the possible offenses or problems, challenges, whatever that they might encounter. You just teach them some foundational principles. Now, let's continue on.
It's also trying to bulletproof them as much as possible when it comes to their mindset and their self-esteem and their self-concept. Because there's been moments, I'm sure, that has arose, and my son and sons who want to be just like me, they want to be just like me, but they know that their skin color is different than me. That's the way that God made them. My son Hap is going to be probably 6 inches taller than I am because he's already, much taller, right? So we are going to look different in a lot of different ways, but we're so similar in all the ways that matter. We're so similar in all the ways that matter. And you get this question too, where it's like,
again, right here, where he talks about looking different. Yeah, it's okay to look different from your parents. A lot of people look different from their parents. Like I said, I use my family as an example. People look different in my family. And I'm sure a lot of you have family members who look different. Maybe you even have family members that some people tease and say, oh, you're not really part of the family because that's how different they look. It is biology. Now, sure, if you want to put a racial lens on it, you can say, well, yeah, but he's white and that's completely different. And yeah, these kids are black, but it's still biology. So, and that can run the gamut in a family. So you can always say, okay, yeah, we look different because in his case, his kids are adopted. So of course he'll say, yeah, you look different because you were adopted. If that's what he's telling obviously he has to tell his kids, but it has no bearing on who he can explain to them. It has no bearing on who they are, right? I look different than you because you're adopted. That's it. But you're still my kid. I'm still your parents. And that's it. And I love the fact. So when he talks about wisdom, if you have not read Proverbs is a wonderful, wonderful book of the Bible that talks about all of these different things. Anyway, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and discipline is what Proverbs says. And anyway, let's move on.
Well, hey, you're a white dude from Missouri living in Nashville. How are you going to raise black children? And my thought is, and it probably rubs people the wrong way, and it's probably the wrong answer that people want to hear, is I'm not raising black children. I'm raising children. I'm not raising black men. I'm raising men. And whether you are black or you are white, no matter what race that you are, there are certain things about being a man and being a good man when it comes to character and integrity and safeguarding the helpless and sticking up for those who need it and being a good man of reputation. None of that has to do with skin color. Everything has to do with the character of the man. And like I said, it's probably probably not an answer that some people would say is important, but
I love this response. This should be the response of every man who's raising sons, no matter what color they are. Because here's the question that has to be asked. Are values associated with skin color? Are they? Is working hard, taking care of your family, making sure your kids are fed, making sure that you're teaching them how to be a man, how to fix things around the house, how to, like all of those things. What does that have to do with color? Zero. It has zero to do with color. I am so happy he said that, even though people all over the social media, all over the interwebs, were shocked and amazed that somebody would say something like that. Who are you is the question that has to be asked. When we talk about identity, who are we? Who am I? Who are you? Are you just a black person, or are you just a white person, or a Hispanic? Like, who are you? Are you someone who believes you shouldn't steal from other people? You shouldn't break into people's houses. You shouldn't run around carjacking or shooting people or whatever the case may be, right? You shouldn't be dressing your son up in dresses and putting makeup on him. Like, who are you? Because that runs the gamut. You could be any color doing any one of those things. So really what it boils down to when we talk about identity, and in the world, in the land of, or in the era of, everybody is so stuck on identity politics. The question has to be asked, is your identity just about your skin and what you look like? Because that's really shallow if that's your identity, to be honest. Can we keep it real? Because I keep it real on this channel. You know? I keep it real on this channel. Probably why my channel is so small, because I'm not going to just say things that people want to hear. I'm going to say like what I really believe. And let me tell you something else about this. Before I go there, one more thing about Proverbs. Like I said, if you haven't read it, you should take some time and read it. It starts off out the gate pretty much talking about not to run around with people with bad behavior, right? The Bible tells us that bad company corrupts good morals. So the Bible has Proverbs, but the Bible has a lot to say about just the human condition. Proverbs, if you don't read anything else about character and morality and the human condition, read Proverbs. It will literally lay out for you a foundation. It is not associated with race or ethnicity. It is simply associated with moral character and what is expected of somebody with good moral character. And if you train your kids in that way, then you will have laid the foundation for the type of person, type of man, in this instance, these boys should be. So he is right on about not raising them. Now, for everybody who for everybody who thinks that the Bible somehow supports racial divisions, it does not. The Bible, anytime there is a division, it is always a division of the people who believe and worship God and the people who do not. If you want to learn a little bit more about that, read Ruth. So it's not about racial division. It's about, again, people who idolaters, which, by the way, is what wrapping your identity up in skin or gender or sex or anything else. It is idolatry when people do that. So that is idolatry. So it's divisive between people who worship God and people who do not. So he is right to say that. Let me just jump in and say this really quick. So even though I was raised, as most of you, or if you've watched my channel, then you know I am from Chicago. I grew up in an all-black area. However, my family, when I tell you never, there was never any race conversations that I ever remember having, like zero, none. My grandmother was she was a very mild-mannered, very feminine, very wise woman. And the things that she would say, she would very much talk about people's character. She would always just say, oh, some people act really ugly. Do you remember when your great, like for some of you would be great grandparents, but my grandma used to always talk about people's character, or she would always say, if somebody was acting up, ill behaved, or had really bad, work ethic, whatever, she would say that they were acting ugly or they were lazy or whatever, but never, ever, ever she distinguished between races of people. She always just focused on values and people's moral character. So I grew up in an environment where we never talked about race. Race was never an issue. So for me, I was able to, even though I grew up around all Black people, I was able to communicate and have no problems with people of different races. I never walked through life looking at people, white people, Black people, all that stuff. Now, when I was in college, they did try to corrupt me when I went to college and try to get me to read a bunch of crazy stuff, even in high school a little bit, but still I wasn't on that because I wasn't raised that way. But so the education system does try to corrupt people to think that way, but I did not. So I was not raised that way. So for me, having friends of other races, dating people of all different shades, that was a non-issue. Even when I was young, when you first start kind of liking boys and stuff, I had posters of I had posters, or I had favorite shows where there were Black kids, white kids, all sorts of color kids, because this was not taught in my household. So you are setting your kids up. I'm just going to say, I believe that people who focus on race are setting their kids up for a lot of hardships in life, because guess what? Black people are not the only people on this earth, or whatever your brand of color is, not the only people on this earth. You have to learn how to live in a society with other people. And I honestly think that's a huge problem for a lot of people today, that they walk around with hate, envy, bitterness, and most of all, have not been socialized, don't know how to interact with people of other backgrounds, of other races, and have huge problems. You are setting your kids up, I believe, for failure if you raise them to only view themselves based on what they look like. Because you can teach your kids about right and wrong, about people who misbehave and people who don't misbehave. And so when they see somebody mistreating them, whether it's racial or whatever, it'll just be lumped into the bucket of people who aren't very nice. Because that's how I was raised, honestly. People who aren't very nice, people who act a certain way, who misbehave, and then you have people who don't, who behave in a way that they should, that is honorable and pleasing to God above all. But they behave in a way that is honorable. But to say you're going to raise somebody as a Black person, what are you saying? What does it mean to raise somebody as a Black person? What does it mean this day and age? Does it mean that you tell your son or daughter, give them the talk? As I hear a lot, I never got the talk. Never. I don't even know anybody who's ever had the talk. Yeah. So does that mean you give your kids the talk? You set them up and you let them know that they're going to encounter a bunch of racism, so they look for it? Is that what you want? Or do you want them to just be prepared for any type of challenges that they encounter in life? Or do you want to make them think that life is going to be so much harder for them? So again, I think this man is right. I am glad if he is going to raise these boys under the direction of biblical values, of how to be upstanding members of society, how to be men, real men who take care of their families, take care of their women, and their children. If he is going to raise two upstanding members of society, what more do people actually want from him? They want him to what? Tell his kids that they are less advantaged because of the way they look. I mean, what are people saying here? What does it mean to raise somebody as black? Honestly, if you really think about that question, what does it mean to raise somebody as white? What do these things mean? We should be looking to raise people with high integrity, with a moral compass that is based on what God says is righteous. We should be raising men and raising people who will be respectful of others, who will not judge people by the way they look, but by their character. That's what I say. What do you say? Let me know in the comments what you think. I'm sure a lot of people are going to hate this view, but this is my view. This is my view. Until next time, ciao. God bless.